One question that has always been asked whenever we discuss America is the status of its two very significant territories, Hawaii and Puerto Rico. Have you ever thought about why are Hawaii and Puerto Rico, two vastly different but equally important territories, treated so differently by the United States government? Both of them are island territories, both have a large indigenous population, both of them have a history of struggle for independence. Yet one is a fully integrated state with representation in Congress, while the other one still remains a U.S. territory without any sort of voting rights or government representation. What's the real difference between these two? And why does one enjoy statehood while the other does not? Why does the U.S. government treat them so differently? Today, we'll try to look for the answers to these questions and much more, so grab your seats and make sure to watch the video till the very end. Now, we all know about Hawaii, the land of extremely beautiful beaches, rich culture, stars of our very own Aquaman, and currently one of the most popular tourist spots in the country. Hawaii is basically an island state present in the Pacific Ocean about 2,000 miles from the mainland. Hawaii became the 50th state of the United States in 1959, joining the Union as the only U.S. state which is composed entirely of islands, which are 137 to be exact. Now, of all the U.S. states, Hawaii is the fourth smallest in terms of area, but with a population of more than 1.4 million, it's the 11th largest state in the country, which makes Hawaii culturally, politically, and strategically an important part of the nation. Just like Hawaii, Puerto Rico too is basically an island. It's located in the Caribbean at about 1,000 miles southeast of Miami, Florida. When it comes to cultural integrity and being popular in terms of tourism, Puerto Rico holds almost the same value as Hawaii. However, it's not a U.S. state. Puerto Rico is actually an unincorporated U.S. territory, which means that it falls under U.S. jurisdiction but doesn't have the same rights and privileges as a state. To understand this huge difference when it comes to statehood, it's important to look into this matter from various angles, from history to modern-day value of both places to political and public influences that led to the current positions of both places. Historical context. Just like all U.S. territories, both Hawaii and Puerto Rico have unique histories that were shaped by the colonization of America by different European powers and eventually U.S. expansion. Hawaii's history. If we talk about Hawaii specifically, it was first settled by Polynesians between 300 and 800 AD. Over the centuries, it developed its own monarchy. Hawaii is one of two U.S. states, along with Texas, that were internationally recognized sovereign nations before becoming U.S. states. However, before all this, the Kingdom of Hawaii was a sovereign nation from 1810 to 1893. The first recorded European contact with Hawaii was made in 1778. British explorer James Cook arrived at the island. After this, a lot of European and American traders started coming to the kingdom, recognizing its enormous agricultural potential. In 1893, American and European capitalists and landholders overthrew the monarchy, which led to the eventual annexation of Hawaii by the U.S. 5 years later in 1898. Hawaii was officially made a U.S. territory in 1900. Things took a huge shift after World War II when Hawaii's strategic location and the growing desire for statehood led the U.S. government to take a public referendum in which 93% of people voted to become a U.S. state, and as a result, Hawaii became the 50th state in 1959. Puerto Rico's history. Unlike Hawaii, Puerto Rico has a much longer history of colonialism. It was first colonized by Spain in 1493, and for centuries, it continued to remain a Spanish territory. Almost 4 centuries later, in 1898, the Spanish-American War happened, and as we all know, America won. As a result, Puerto Rico became a U.S. territory under the Treaty of Paris. Now, over the years, Puerto Rico's status has evolved as it became a Commonwealth in 1952, which to some extent gave it a degree of self-governance. However, Puerto Rico is pretty far from being independent. The U.S. government still retains control over some of the most important areas, like defense and foreign policy. Despite multiple referendums on statehood, the latest of which happened in 2020, Puerto Rico's status still remains to be of a territory with no concrete movement toward statehood. So, in short, As of 2025, Puerto Rico is neither an independent nation nor a U.S. state. Political reasons. If we look at the history, present, and future of both of these places, then Hawaii's statehood was politically advantageous to the United States, especially during the Cold War. Now we know that Hawaii is present in the Pacific Ocean, so this specific location makes it a strategic military outpost, and its admission to the Union helps solidify U.S. influence in the Pacific region. Additionally, apart from the pressure from the U.S. government, there was strong political support in Hawaii itself for statehood, which made it easier for the U.S. government to move forward with the whole annexation process. Puerto Rico's political situation, on the other hand, is much more complicated. In terms of citizenship, Puerto Ricans are considered U.S. citizens, but even then the island lacks full representation in Washington. Unlike Hawaii, the debate of Puerto Rico's political future has a lot of opposition from all ends, and many U.S. politicians argue that admitting Puerto Rico as a state would shift the balance of power in Congress, especially since Puerto Rico's population is mainly Latino. When Hawaii was inducted as a state, it was doing economically quite good, with a huge agricultural economy and a tourism industry that was gearing up for big steps. But according to many experts, unlike Hawaii, Puerto Rico's economy isn't that rich, and its infrastructure is not yet ready for the demands of full statehood. Cultural reasons. There's no doubt that both Hawaii and Puerto Rico are culturally extremely rich. They have a large indigenous population that obviously brings their own culture, cuisine, history, and everything. But when it comes to the cultural relationships with the mainland, which in this case are the other 49 states of the U.S., both Hawaii and Puerto Rico are quite different. When it comes to Hawaii, I think we are all pretty aware of Hawaiian culture as it's been fully integrated into American culture. We see this culture in movies, shows, books, music, and pretty much all of pop culture. From hula dancing to tattoos to Hawaiian cuisine, the islands have become a celebrated part of U.S. tourism and cultural identity. While Hawaiian culture is different from the mainland culture, it is still widely celebrated and understood as part of the American fabric. Puerto Rico, however, still maintains an extremely distinct identity that differs from the mainland U.S. If we talk about the outside influence, Puerto Rican culture has Spanish, African, and Taino influences, but no significant American influence in its culture, music, or cuisine. When it comes to cultural identity, many Puerto Ricans feel caught between two worlds, neither fully part of the U.S. nor completely independent, which has created a unique cultural tension for the natives of this territory. Public opinion. Apart from the political and cultural reasons, another thing that's led to the present-day position of both places is public opinion. In the case of Puerto Rico's statehood, the public opinion of Americans is divided. Many Americans are still pretty unaware of Puerto Rico's political status, while others view that making Puerto Rico a state will put an unnecessary burden on the country's economy. On the other hand, a significant portion of Puerto Ricans, especially on the island, support statehood, though the percentage has varied over time. In the most recent attempt for a referendum in 2020, a majority of Puerto Ricans voted in favor of statehood, but the turnout was low and the results didn't have much effect politically to make any difference. In contrast, Hawaii's public opinion has always been pretty straightforward. From the time of the Second World War, Hawaiians considered themselves as true American nationals, and they wanted to become one in terms of statehood too. As a result, when the official referendum was conducted in 1959, more than 93% of people voted in favor of becoming a U.S. state. This widespread support played a key role in Hawaii's eventual admission to the Union. Global perspective. In terms of global perspectives, both Hawaii and Puerto Rico stand at almost opposite ends of a pole and show the U.S. in two different ways. Now, we are all aware of the fact that in the 21st century, most of the world is moving toward decolonization and the establishment of independent nations. But many U.S. territories remain under the jurisdiction of a distant power, which raises questions about sovereignty, self-determination, and international law. Puerto Rico is the biggest example of this case. As it still continues its status of a U.S. territory, this is often seen as a thing which is targeted by other global powers. Many powers across the world are of the view that as Puerto Rico isn't a U.S. state, it should be given complete independence and allowed to operate as a sovereign nation, even in terms of factors like economy, military, and foreign affairs. Hawaii, on the other hand, represents a completely opposite end of the spectrum. As a U.S. state, it stands as a symbol of U.S. expansionism and military strategy. Now, although the referendum was clearly in favor of statehood, there are many native Hawaiians who see this annexation as an unlawful occupation of an independent kingdom. Because of this, Hawaii becoming a state is somewhat a controversial event of American history, and many global powers and human rights experts criticize this step. Modern-day status. Today, both island regions have a completely different status. As a state, Hawaii has complete representation in the U.S. Congress, with 2 senators and a voting member in the House of Representatives. Hawaii, just like California, Texas, Nevada, and all other U.S. states, has a say in presidential elections through the Electoral College. Its residents are U.S. citizens and have access to federal programs like Social Security, Medicare, and unemployment benefits. Puerto Rico, though a U.S. territory, does not have the same rights because it's still not a U.S. state and just remains a territory. It doesn't have voting representation in Congress, and its residents, though still U.S. citizens, can't vote in presidential elections unless they are residing in one of the 50 states. Puerto Rico has a local government, but all the important issues like defense, foreign relations, and certain tax laws are still controlled by the U.S. federal government. Puerto Ricans are also subject to certain federal laws, but they do not have the same federal benefits as those living in the states. What the future holds. Now that we've covered the past and the present, let's take a look at what the future holds for both of these places. So, the future of Hawaii as a U.S. state is secure because it remains an important part of the United States both politically and militarily. Its location continues to be important for the U.S. Army and government, and there are a lot of strategic military bases in the state. Moreover, in terms of economy, Hawaii is doing quite well, with a median household income of more than $95,000, which, by the way, is 6th among the 50 states. Similarly, over the last couple of decades, Hawaii has become a tourist hub, which makes it even more important for the American economy. On the other hand, Puerto Rico's future is more uncertain. Just like in the past, the debate over its status of whether to remain a territory, become a state, or pursue independence will continue to be a key issue in both Puerto Rican politics and U.S. policy. Within the territory, there are all types of different narratives that mean it's unlikely that a majority will reach a certain choice as of now. Advocates for statehood continue to push for changes in U.S. law that would allow Puerto Rico to achieve the same rights as the other 50 states. But it still remains to be uncertain whether the U.S. government will take steps to grant Puerto Rico the full statehood it desires, as for current government this matter isn't of key importance. There's no doubt that for the people of both Hawaii and Puerto Rico, becoming an American state holds great value. To completely understand the differences in the political and cultural statuses of Hawaii and Puerto Rico, you have to see their complex historical, political, and social factors. Hawaii becoming a state was equally important for the U.S. government because of its geopolitical interests and economic richness, while Puerto Rico's case is a bit different because of many political reasons. The question still remains whether Puerto Rico will one day achieve statehood or independence, but one thing is for sure, that whatever happens, it will be one of the most major and talked about events of the USA's political landscape. I hope you liked the video, so make sure to comment your opinion on the topic and click the subscribe button so you can get a notification about our next video.